In 1988, the Soviet-Afghan War ended after 8 years of conflict. Physicist Stephen Hawking broadened our understanding of the cosmos with the publication of A Brief History of Time. At the box office, Tim Burton's Beetlejuice emerged as a major hit, ushering in a wave of goth fashions for young women. The Pope of Trash, John Waters, found unexpected box office success with the family-friendly Hairspray, just weeks prior to the death of the film's star, Divine. And animation history was made with Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
There's a very strange corridor between 1987 and 1988 where Hollywood briefly became obsessed with body swap and age swap movies. This is movies like Father Like Son, Vice Versa, 18 Again, but then arguably kind of two of the big body swap, age swap movies came out towards the end of this cycle and dominated, and those are Child's Play and Big.
Chucky is a word you can say to anyone and they'll know exactly who you're talking about. Doesn't matter if they're a horror fan, doesn't matter if they've seen the film, we all know Chucky. On the surface, he's just a diabolical doll with a bloodlust, but that film actually tackles some anxieties that were inherent to 1988, namely in that it features a lonely little boy being raised by his working single mother who just really needs a friend.
Hi, I'm Andy. What's your name? Hi, I'm Chucky, and I'm your friend to the end. Heidi-ho.
Child's Play is situated contextually in a great time for a killer doll movie because the 80s are the decade of toys, or the decade of Saturday morning cartoons and toy spin-offs, and this idea of these anthropomorphic, huggable, collectible monstrosities.
This is the Cabbage Patch Doll riot era. You saw parents rioting outside of toy stores to get their hands on a Cabbage Patch doll.
Now your kids have these voices in their ears. They have these Saturday morning cartoons telling them to want this thing and buy this thing, and you're not paying enough attention to know what those voices are. And that's what Chucky is. Chucky is this cute little thing that has the spirit of a serial killer inside it. The script is written by Don Mancini, a queer man, and the film is really full of this sad queer loneliness. Andy as a character is just longing for a friend, right? For a male figure in his life, and unfortunately what he gets is Chucky.
Brad Dourif is such a star in this film. He really plays two characters, because he plays Charles Lee Ray as the serial killer before he turns into Chucky. He turns that voice performance into its own character. He has such a unique delivery, and it really sticks with you.
Shouldn't tell your customers where you hide things like this, John. Gets you in trouble every time.
One of my favorite moments is when Andy's mother realizes that there's no batteries in Chucky and then springs to life and she drops it. But once it's under the couch, it's back to an innocent doll form. Like this kind of mental game that Chucky plays with all the characters in the film really works.
That is the perfect way to entice a horror fan or a burgeoning horror fan, is to find something that hits that simultaneous attraction and revulsion. And I think for a lot of kids, seeing a psychopathic doll is exactly what does that. There's probably nothing better than Child's Play to kind of really make you feel like, oh, this is for me, but maybe it's also not.
It's funny to me that Big is not considered one of the movies that we look back on as being very, very important in the trajectory of women directors in Hollywood, because Penny Marshall was one of the very few women directors working at the time, and Big is the first movie directed by a woman to cross $100 million at the box office.
One of the wild things in the making of Big that I think a lot of people don't know is for a long time it was going to star Robert De Niro. It was a film that was about a streetwise Bronx kid kind of getting mixed up in this business. They prepped a lot with De Niro. It's actually what helped Penny Marshall get a lot of clout and be able to kind of do whatever she wanted. But in the end, they decided waiting for Tom Hanks was worth it, and Robert De Niro dropped out.
Tom Hanks was nominated for Best Actor at the Oscars for his role in Big, and it's unusual for a comedy to achieve this. But when you look at how physical his performance is in Big, how fully committed he is to the role of Josh Baskin, I think it's very unsurprising that the Academy recognized him for this. When he nails that rap that convinces his best friend that he is in fact Josh, it's all about timing, it's all about physicality, and no one other than Tom Hanks could have brought that to this.
She said a Triscuit, a biscuit, ice cream soda pop, vanilla on top. Ooh, Charlene, walking down the street 10 times a week. I meant it, I said it, I stole my mama's credit. I'm cool, I'm hot, sock you in the stomach 3 more times.
Tom Hanks really considered it a collaborative role with David Moscow, who you see play the kid at the start of the movie. But what you didn't see is that they filmed the entire movie with David Moscow. They did a whole rehearsal where he acted off of everyone, and then Tom Hanks studied those tapes and tried to emulate him. So he actually credits that child actor with a lot of his performance.
First, I thank David Moscow, who's the actor who I really share the role with, and so he deserves some of this because as cute and adorable as Josh was when I was doing him, he started off as this cute and adorable kid.
For the famous Toy Store sequence with the piano keys, there were 2 stand-ins really ready at any moment. Producers and Penny Marshall were concerned that both Robert Loggia and Tom Hanks wouldn't be able to nail the footwork and the choreography in the sequence. They took one look at these stand-ins and said, not today. They nailed every single close-up of their feet and every dance move in this, and the stand-ins were completely unnecessary.
One of the things that made this movie so beloved, I think, is that it has that undercurrent of melancholy that you need in every good comedy. You need that feeling of, oh, this is all slipping by, or every little thing that we have that's great also comes at some other kind of a loss. So we've seen him be a kid. We've seen him be scared in his New York hotel room when the sirens and the gunshots are happening. But I think that the minute he becomes an adult is the very last second before he becomes a child again. And I love that about that movie.
They Live is a killer movie. It is up there in the best of John Carpenter. He is on point with that amazing synth score, with the Roddy Piper performance and the glasses and all of those incredible practical effects.
The potency of a cheap B movie where you put on a pair of glasses and everything reveals itself to you in 1950s black and white is just so perfect. The idea that the reality of Reagan's America is a retrograde, black and white, good and evil, us versus them thing, and everything else is a distraction.
Oh. You see, I take these glasses off, she looks like a regular person, doesn't she, huh? Put them back on, formaldehyde face, that's what we got.
That's enough out of you.
This film really marked the great migration from the WWF and wrestling to Hollywood. Roddy Piper did it first, and he did it really well. This film would be so silly if he wasn't so committed to this performance. A lot of the lines that Roddy Piper has in They Live, which are now so iconic and so silly, were unused lines from his wrestling career, and that includes the very iconic bubblegum line.
I've come here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum. What a great line.
There is a 6-minute fight scene between Roddy Piper and Keith David that must be seen to be believed. Like, on the one hand, when you're watching it, it feels like it goes on too long, but it could also go on forever, and I wouldn't mind.
The point of the fight is not that it's funny that it keeps going on for so long. It's that Keith David's character does not want to know the truth about the world. He would rather get the shit kicked out of him than put those glasses on and see how bad his situation is.
Look! Look at them, they're everywhere!
What isn't really talked about enough is how iconic the visage of these aliens were with its bright blue and red. And that style actually appears in a whole lot of graffiti from the late 90s. Anything with like an anti-capitalist bent borrowed that from They Live. Once you see that film, you start seeing those faces everywhere, which was kind of the point of the film.
It almost goes without saying that Die Hard is one of the best action movies ever made. If you look at action movies before Die Hard and action movies after Die Hard, you have two different kinds of action movies.
No one, absolutely no one, had any idea what was coming with Die Hard. Die Hard was an action movie with the guy from Moonlighting.
Bruce Willis at the time was a very untested star. And beyond that, he was really considered a comedy star and not an action star. Moonlighting has its share of action, but he was really known more for his comedy. So taking a risk on casting him was actually huge.
It's about people I think the audience can relate to. It's not, these aren't larger-than-life characters. These are, for the most part, ordinary people.
He was a reluctant hero. He was a regular working-class guy. It was really funny, first of all, which not a lot of action movies were at that point, and very human. So you felt like anybody in this situation with a special skill set, but not a superhuman, could save the day, too.
Come out to the coast. We'll get together, have a few laughs.
Die Hard is also really interesting because of the politics of it. There was a lot of fear about foreign interference and different markets, like the Japanese market was getting really huge. It's really indicative of sort of the Reagan-era politics at the time, especially because the hero then becomes this rugged, everyday Superman cowboy.
I was always kind of partial to Roy Rogers, actually. I really like those sequin shirts.
Do you really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Yippee-ki-yay, mother...
Hans Gruber, Alan Rickman, is the greatest antagonist ever put on film. He is elegant, prepared, resourceful, smart, well-spoken, charming, monstrous, ruthless. Like, he's all the things you want in a villain, and he is having so much fun being bad.
Talk to me! Where are my detonators? Where are they, or shall I shoot another one? Sooner or later, I might get to someone you do care about.
One of the reasons why Alan Rickman's death scene is so good is John McTiernan really took a risk. He set up this stunt. Alan Rickman actually fell 70 feet, but he chose not to tell Alan Rickman that he was going to let him go. So the first take they took, Alan Rickman was legitimately freaked out and afraid, and that's the take you see in the movie.
LA at Christmas time at Nakatomi Plaza is a character in this film, and sort of the single location adds a level of pressure to it that I think a lot of action movies following that also take up, like Speed. You can't have Speed if you don't have Die Hard.
Die Hard was so good, and it was so easily accessible as a one-line plot synopsis, it started an entire subgenre.
I think one of the reasons why you see so many movies about working women in the late 80s is so much had changed for working women. While obviously women had been in the workforce for a long time, you saw stuff like sexual harassment laws existing. 1988 actually saw the first time where a woman would not have to be required to have a man co-sign a loan to start a business. So all of this stuff I think happened a lot later than I expected, and that's part of the reason why you see these business-driven female characters in movies.
You know when you find those gems of movies you've wished you'd had your whole life? Crossing Delancey is one of those movies for me. There is something so magical and wonderful and charming about Crossing Delancey, while still bringing in a lot of real-world stuff that makes you want to yell at the TV, that just makes it the perfect rom-com watch.
Crossing Delancey is inarguably the greatest film ever made about pickles. It's a film that sometimes gets called the pickle movie, and it does a bit of a disservice to it because this is a really delightful rom-com that examines an intersection of Jewish culture that people like Woody Allen never had.
The Amy Irving character is very much a late 80s romantic comedy archetype. She's successful, she's self-possessed, she's wary of certain traditions, Jewish or otherwise, and certainly wary of matchmaking traditions.
Well, she's a lovely girl. She opens her eyes, she looks around, she meets a fella with a little help,
It is such a pleasure to watch that performance because she's playing someone who lives and breathes the ethnicity, if not the religion, and she's trying to question what she wants to carry forward. And then she falls for a guy who is so traditional that he smells of brine, played by Peter Riegert, who, not necessarily the person you would cast in that role, but he nails it. He's so good at it. And watching the push and pull of her attraction to him versus her questioning of her identity and her rejection of certain pieces of Judaism is the push and pull of the attraction.
Wait a minute. You mean you didn't hire her?
No. But on this particular day, she pulled this from her bag. And I said, yes, Mrs. Mandelbaum, this one I'll meet.
Crossing Delancey was a movie that the industry was also very interested in because it was the first in a long time from Joan Micklin Silver, who had been one of the first women for the Academy to really recognize as a director and just hadn't made a movie in a while, so a lot of people were very eager to see it.
It doesn't feel like a machine-made film. It doesn't feel like it came off an assembly line. To use the pickle analogy, it feels like a movie that's kind of been brined and bottled and sold by hand. And there's very few lines in 80s cinema that resonate more than Peter Riegert saying a joke in a pickle for only a nickel.
I could not love Working Girl more because it's about women's ambition. And it's in favor of women's ambition. I was just starting out in my career, and when I saw the opening shot, the Staten Island Ferry, the Carly Simon Let the River Run song, I just could feel like all the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I knew that this movie was going to be for me.
We have this character, Tess McGill, who's played by Melanie Griffith, a very fresh-faced, a very naive, a very charming Melanie Griffith, who you just like instantly love. But she's a secretary that, is not really being taken seriously. She's had a lot of bad bosses, all of them men, and she's struggling to find her place in the professional world, as I think a lot of women were in that time period.
I know what I'm doing.
Yes, so do I. Screwed up your life.
No, I'm trying to make it better. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life working my ass off and getting nowhere just because I followed rules that I had nothing to do with setting up, okay?
Watching Melanie Griffith felt like this huge moment around what does it mean to choose your own destiny, to chart your own path? What does it mean to bet on yourself? And I saw so much of myself in her. I saw this young woman who wanted to decide for herself what her life could look like, in spite of what everyone else was telling her.
Griffith is so good, and even though the characters are kind of awful that they're playing, Weaver is so entertaining as her boss, and Joan Cusack is so entertaining as her best friend, and Alec Baldwin is so entertaining as her sleazy boyfriend, that it works.
Mike Nichols was drawn to Working Girl for a very interesting reason. He really considered it an immigrant story. He said that these women are from a different culture, from a different context, and he said that as a German Jew who moved to New York and found himself sort of upended, he actually really related to this character and said that he understood what it was like to struggle to be taken seriously when you're not in your own culture.
I'm not sure that there's a better final shot in all of moviedom for me than this final shot of Working Girl.
We see Tess finally in an office. She's got her own little corner office. She's got windows. She can see outside. She's got her own phone. She's got her own secretary, which is mind-blowing considering she started the film as a secretary. She calls up her best friend and she's just like having the time of her life. But then we pull outside of the building and we see more and more offices and we just realize that she's just one of many women that are trying to make it.
That pullout just made me feel how big we were, like how many of us there were and how exciting that was. Where there's one Tess, there's a million Tesses, and that it was all okay. And I will always be grateful to Mike Nichols for that movie.
Dead Ringers is kind of like a milestone in David Cronenberg's career because it's the first feature film being released by a studio where he wasn't tied to genre convention. With Dead Ringers, David Cronenberg could explore his obsessions, things with the body, things with relationships, but they didn't have to go toward the kind of obvious climax that you would expect.
Well, I had a lot of trouble getting Dead Ringers financed. I couldn't really get it financed strictly in Hollywood in the normal way, whereas with The Fly, because it was a genre picture, it was easily understood. It's a horror film, science fiction film, then there was no trouble with that one, you see.
Dead Ringers is about the downfall of two gynecologists, Beverly and Elliot Mantle, both played by Jeremy Irons. They are very loosely based on two real twin gynecologists from New York, the Marcus twins, who died very mysteriously within days of each other.
They live together, they breathe together, they have been together far too long, and that has to shatter. And unfortunately, because this is a David Cronenberg film, it shatters in the worst possible way.
You can be honest with me. After all, I am laying both of you, aren't I?
No, just hang on a minute.
It's a sweet little act you have. You soften them up with all that smarmy concern, and along comes Dracula here and polishes them off.
The instruments for operating on mutant women are perhaps the most visceral and terrifying movie prop in any horror film I've ever seen.
I'm afraid I'm not familiar with these instruments, Doctor.
I've just had them made. They're brand new.
These instruments for operating on mutant women look like medieval torture tools. They look like tools that would have been used in the Spanish Inquisition or at the witch trials. So in the scene where we have the brothers dressed in this papal red surgical gowns, it almost imparts this religious ceremony to the sequence.
I don't want to call Cronenberg's take on humanity perverse. It's not perverse. It's clinical. It is truthful. There is something honest about the way he depicts human beings and relationships, and it is kind of scary.
Rain Man is a tough film to discuss now. Yes, it was the top-grossing movie of 1988 for some reason, and I think that reason is that there is nothing but pure star power coming from Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise in that movie. Those performances and their chemistry together makes them electric, and the feel-good atmosphere of the movie makes you want to watch it over and over again.
Well, we'll have to let you drive sometime.
Raymond! You never touch the steering wheel when I'm driving. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Do you hear me?
Of course, I don't have my underwear.
What?
I'm definitely not wearing my underwear.
What are you talking about? I gave you a fresh pair of mine this morning.
No, not my underwear.
At one point, the character of Raymond in pre-production was meant to be more highly functioning, kind of a happy-go-lucky character. And as Dustin Hoffman was doing his research and met real-life savants, he nailed the fact that this couldn't be that. It had to be a very nuanced performance that exhibited neurodivergency in a more authentic way.
It did, like nothing else could have done, create awareness around autism and the spectrum of autism in general. A lot of people didn't know what it was before. This movie doesn't do a great job of kind of explaining it, but it does create a lot of empathy for the Dustin Hoffman character, and it does create a lot of understanding of people can't just behave a different way when they are dealing with this.
You know, we see Tom Cruise's character rifling through Raymond's book collection, putting the books out of order, which is really causing Raymond a lot of distress.
Read the 12th Night?
Stop it.
Yes. Yes.
You read all these stories that are in this book, and you don't know if you read the book.
I don't know if you're in.
You don't know.
Maybe you better put it back.
The rest of the film is really about Tom Cruise's character's journey as he realizes that his treatment of Raymond is really deplorable. He also realizes at a certain point that he's afforded this cushy lifestyle because his family sent Raymond away.
How, Barbara? I'm not burned.
Top burn, baby.
I'm not burned, man.
Top burn, baby.
I'm not burned.
Yeah.
I'm not burned. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay.
I think Rain Man is a movie that a lot of people might brush over as, you know, this is a product of its time, it's a little schmaltzy, it's a little sickly sentimental, but I think it is interesting for what it tells us about how these ideas were viewed in the '88, and it's also a hugely successful film. It was a huge success at the Oscars, it did incredibly well, and you don't really see that now. A drama about two characters on a road trip learning to understand each other better. Unless there's superheroes in it, that's not the type of movie that comes #1 at the box office.
He said The Quest, which was the original working title that he had chosen. And I said, oh yeah, the prince who comes, he says, yeah, he said, we should do that movie. I said, wow. I said, is it written? You know, and he said, no, we have to write it too.
Coming to America is really Eddie Murphy cashing the blank check that all his box office success had gotten him in the 1980s. This was the first time that he really wholly formed an idea, getting a story credit on the film, and really worked hard to craft a specific Eddie Murphy movie.
I think when it comes to Coming to America, we do not talk enough about how great it is as a romantic comedy. When we think of romantic comedies, we think When Harry Met Sally, Notting Hill. The fact that it's so funny often overshadows the romantic elements to this film.
This is a movie that was kind of a celebration of blackness, even if it was like fake blackness, this fake kind of African country. That was huge. It was a big budget movie. This is the Black Panther of 1988.
We've got the magnificent James Earl Jones as the King of Zamunda, which is completely fitting. We have choreography by Paula Abdul, that incredible makeup by Rick Baker, who brings Murphy's characters to life. And we also have a little pop-up of Samuel L. Jackson as the robber.
You have Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall playing multiple characters in this film. Each character that they're playing is funny, unique, and also very heartwarming. So when you have the guys in the barbershop, you get the sense that this is what a New York barbershop would be like. A lot of guys from the neighborhood, whether it be African-American or Jewish, hanging out, talking about boxing.
Pound for pound, Sugar Ray Robinson, the greatest fighter ever lived. Oh, come on, man. What about Joe Louis?
The Blonde Bomber. Now that was a great boxer.
You damn right. I suppose nobody in here ever heard of Cassius Clay.
This is an African-American barbershop scene in 1988. We didn't have much of that. Eddie Murphy's Coming to America was the first kind of big movie, the first movie of any kind to really embrace that and house that.
I think the part that most people remember from Coming to America, and probably the funniest part, is John Amos and his McDowell's franchise. His weird side ripoff of McDonald's and all his funny language around it.
Now, see, they got the Big Mac. I got the Big Mick. We both got 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, and onions. But they use a sesame seed bun.
Eddie Murphy was sometimes accused of essentially having huge success for himself, but not paying it forward to other black performers. But Coming to America, there's only 3 white speaking roles. It's really a movie for black performers and black comedy performers of different generations. So it is really him kind of turning that way, and you saw him do it more and more as his career continued.
Hairspray is so many things. It's family-friendly camp, it's unapologetically kitschy, it's subversive, it's political, it's intersectional. Hairspray is just an absolute gem of a film.
John Waters is probably my favorite director. I love him and everything he's done, and I think Hairspray is such a singular and unique feat for him because it is the least explicitly queer of his films.
John Waters continues to be sort of the Prince of Filth. Prior to this, every John Waters movie, or at least most of them, had an X rating, and this is his only PG film.
The film is about Tracy Turnblad, played by Ricki Lake, and she is a rising star in the hair hopper scene of Baltimore in the 1960s. And after she witnesses an injustice against her black friends who are refused entry into a dance, she starts protesting segregation and is ostracized by the television station.
And today I'd like to introduce a brand new dance and dedicate it to some of my special friends who, because of small-minded people, can't be here with me today. My dance is called the waddle. That girl's got roaches in her hair.
Roaches?
I love Divine in Hairspray. I'm such a Divine fan, and her performance as Edna Turnblad is so vulnerable. It's so delightful. This is a character that has shut herself into her house because she's embarrassed of how she looks. And throughout the film, she learns to feel beautiful in the eyes of her daughter and in the eyes of her husband.
You just let Tracy take her pick.
How about a fabulous frock just for me?
Tracy will have to work 1 extra day for free.
It's a deal. Thank you, Mr. Pinky.
It is a movie where if you watched it and were like, oh my God, me and my mom love this movie, let's watch another movie starring Divine, you would be making a fatal mistake, right? Like, this is the master of filth showing that the filth is always a choice, right? That John Waters' other films are weaponizing their prurience and dirtiness to an effect, and he can make this sort of people-pleasing, crowd-pleasing, sweet little movie.
1988 was a big time of change in animation, partially because you saw brand new things being tried in animation. You saw huge leaps pushed by visionaries like Hayao Miyazaki and Richard Williams to change the form and really create special films. Who Framed Roger Rabbit really required the success of Back to the Future to exist. Robert Zemeckis at this point could do just about whatever he wanted, and he chose to kind of do whatever he wanted. He loved mixing kind of technicians and artistry, but it was a totally monumental task to create Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
It's one of those movies where you kind of can't wrap your head around how they're accomplishing this, because it's not just that they're drawing two-dimensional characters, cartoons on live-action images. The way they're interacting with the world required so much elaborate animatronic work that is invisible.
One of the things that really holds the film together is the performance by Bob Hoskins. There's a lot of physicality that goes on where he has to be serious one moment and then a little goofy the next. It's really mesmerizing to watch.
I could never hurt anybody. Ow! My whole purpose in life is to make people.
Everybody knows this line. I'm not bad, I'm just drawn that way. It's perfect, it's fantastic. Jessica Rabbit is a classic femme fatale. It's so easy to love her. She's very tongue-in-cheek while also being over the top, while also being quite innocent all at the same time. She's a babe.
I've loved you more than any woman's ever loved a rabbit.
Kathleen Turner talks about how Jessica Rabbit is her most iconic role. Forget Romancing the Stone, forget War of the Roses. Everyone talks about Jessica Rabbit, and she says she signs more glossies of Jessica Rabbit than she does of her own face.
I think I'm not alone in being horrifically traumatized by the scene where Judge Doom takes that innocent little shoe and immerses it in the dip, and it just slowly dies in front of you.
That was traumatizing for me, okay? Like, I loved Roger Rabbit as a child, but every time we got to that scene, I felt everything inside me just close up. You think about like Christopher Lloyd when he reveals himself as the villain and gets that high-pitched squeal. Like, this is a terrifying movie for kids.
It was my first introduction to film noir cinema. I didn't know what Humphrey Bogart movies were. I didn't know what Hollywood in the 1940s looked like. And I didn't realize until much later just how well it actually did capture that era, and not just of Hollywood, but of filmmaking at that time.
It is just such a bizarre, energetic, goofy movie that keeps throwing weird sexual situations in animated form at the audience. And it probably shouldn't be viewed by small children, but at the same time, the small children just want to see Donald Duck and Daffy Duck have a piano duet. It is a Looney Tunes. It is a Merry Melodies production. It just happens to be made by Disney, which is crazy, and also happens to work.
Obviously, My Neighbor Totoro is engaged with a lot of Japanese folklore, but at the same time, Miyazaki is really creating his own characters and his own folklore. He imagines this world of forest sprites and goblins, but goblins that are essentially seeing the industrialization around them and transforming to match.
No one's quite sure what Totoro is. He's got the pointy ears like a cat and whiskers. He's kind of a mix of a cat and the raccoons that you see in Japan. But of course, the bus is pure feline, and it's my favorite aspect of My Neighbor Totoro.
80s animation had a lot of anti-cat propaganda, and I think Totoro does a really good job of giving a pro-cat choice in the 8-legged cat bus that ferries the girls around their town that they have just moved into. It is something that I dream of traveling in because the seats are warm and cat flesh. I just want to wrap myself in it.
When asked to describe My Neighbor Totoro, Miyazaki gets a little philosophical. He says that it is a film about what we don't notice, what we've forgotten, and what we think we have lost.
It's so strange to watch it as an adult and realize all these things are so front and center in the story that you don't think they are when you're a kid because, oh, her mom's not well and she worries a little bit, but mostly she goes and plays with these creatures. And then you watch the movie as an adult and you're like, oh my God, this is about losing your parents. This is about the fear of being alone. This is about how kids will find ways to be normal in abnormal situations, but also it lets them be sad about it.
I was so impressed as a child watching this film. I've come to use it to impress other children in the future. I really think it's just a perfect movie. That theme song at the end is so infectious. It's still one of my favorite theme songs from any movie, from any era.
So Tim Burton, Beetlejuice, we all grew up with it, we all take it for granted, but as a sophomore film, is there anything more perfect than Beetlejuice? I mean, right after Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Beetlejuice, and right after that, Batman, guy was hitting dingers.
The horror elements of Beetlejuice are so fun as an entry point for younger people that would then get into horror. There's a reason that most horror fans will tell you that Tim Burton was their first love, because he is a director that has a very particular style that pops off screen. And when you see a Tim Burton movie, even as a kid, you understand that there's an auteur behind it making decisions.
It has so much iconography and so much density of visuals and world building that you kind of get lost in it and you don't really question the reality of this very strange supernatural family comedy.
I think really Catherine O'Hara steals the show in Beetlejuice. This is really her kind of big coming out. And she is actually treading a pretty fine line because she's a ridiculous character, but she is also a fairly pointed representation of like New York artists at the time and how they would be.
Open this door, you dead people, or we'll bust it down and we'll drag you out by the ropes you hanged yourself with.
They didn't commit suicide.
It doesn't matter.
Oh, Winona, wow. What an iconic performance Winona was in that one. Maybe like we wouldn't have as many goths in the 90s if it wasn't for Winona in Beetlejuice.
Live people ignore the strange and unusual. I myself am strange and unusual.
You look like a regular girl to me.
This is a film that really defined Winona as a personality in Hollywood and in the movie landscape. We think of her being the strange and unusual girl, and that's what Lydia Dietz is, but also being like a proud kind of goth girl and like the black sheep of her family. Like I could immediately identify with that. And wanting to hang out with ghosts, that's a personal dream of mine, is to have a bunch of ghost friends that I hang out with that live at my house and want to dance with me in the living room.
The one-liners in this film are second to none, and Michael Keaton's portrayal of Beetlejuice is nothing short of iconic, even though he's actually only in the film a scant 17 minutes.
Michael Keaton's performance as Beetlejuice is not talked about enough. It is an Oscar-worthy performance. It is something that a very well-known actor, at the peak of his stardom at this time, was in full makeup. He was doing improvisational, physical, comedic performance that is simply iconic, even to this day.
I lived through the Black Plague, and I had a pretty good time during that. I've seen The Exorcist about 167 times, and it keeps getting funnier every single time I see it. Not to mention the fact that you're talking to a dead guy. Now, what do you think? You think I'm qualified?
In a Tim Burton world, death is not something to be feared. Death is a part of life. Death is something that we embrace. What's actually the most scary thing is when there's a lack of love. And there's something really sweet and really endearing about that. That's the thing about Tim Burton, is he finds the beauty in the morbidity of things. It's a wild circus landscape. Other movies don't want to make the afterlife look like a good time, but this movie does.